afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm the Gray Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Friday, May 17th, 2024. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread? First card we are starting our day off with today is 6 of Pentacles in its reversal. One of the things that we see here, again, we've been talking a lot about this aspect or aspiration of energetically shifting energy right now. There's a lot of this navigating right now of wounds, old wounds for some of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency. For energy coming into divine union frequency, this is making room for other people's wounds within your own energetic self, if these are energies coming into divine union. While for energy and separation right now, we see that there are new energetic bridges that are being formed specifically by navigating and observing and introducing each other to one's wounds at the time of initial encounter. What are all of these energies doing at the time that they're able to observe something? How they're navigating it, how they are perceiving something. That is what is allowing for that moment of energetic healing. Masculine and feminine energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency right now. A lot of this feels like, I want to say, a restoration point energetically, right? Because if these were moments or opportunities wherein energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency has been carrying something for a long period of time, what do we see is happening in the moment or modality where someone is able to look back on their own experience due to the healing that they've experienced with the counterpart up until this point? Bearing in mind, this is not work that is being facilitated for the counterpart, but feeling that sense of security and stability and affirmation as you do so. That is that moment that feels like a little bit of a revelation in terms of your own ability of recognizing that when you perceive something the wrong way, you give it the wrong energetic signature, right? That's why we see a lot of that energy right now, almost feeling that immediate, I want to say the minute that you shift the energy, it almost feels like the wound itself starts to heal, because that's that moment that you suddenly realize that you've been pouring a lot of that energy into something, but your own perception, it's almost like you've been putting the wrong thing into it in order to heal it, right? Feminine, masculine energy. If these were spaces and places wherein due to your own, if you hadn't healed your own connection with feminine to a certain extent and you were carrying some kind of maternal wound with you, and I'm going to say this again, this isn't necessarily in direct connection to your mother, but some experience where you are anticipating or experiencing or deriving or expecting compassion from a feminine energy, but instead you received injury. That ability of masculine not to take that as a moment of personal rejection, but almost to have enough of an energetic connection with feminine at this time, having healed enough of your own connection to feminine at this moment that you can look back on something with a higher degree of empathy. That is that moment of understanding that almost allows for that feeling of guilt to be removed around something that you may have held guilt on. Because that's that moment that, again, it's not that you say that there wasn't an injury that occurred, but it's almost that moment that you're able to relieve the sense of blame that you may have been holding yourself accountable to at that moment, because of your ability to energetically empathize and connect with the feminine energy that may have been in such a point of pain at the time that they gave you that wound. That you're seeing the fact that your own ability to be able to adjust your own behavior in the present in such a way that that would never occur around the feminine. That is almost how we see that a lot of this energy is getting healed at this time. And a lot of the energy in the divine union frequency, that ability of seeing something feels like a healing point. Because that's seeing something in a different way, that it becomes a part of your own affirmation and saying, I am going to move forward in such a way that I know that I will not create that in those around me. So that is that energetic mindfulness that we're seeing to a certain degree for a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, that almost feels like in the present, you're able to energetically heal something from the past, built on that sense of energetically understanding. That continuation of something that was cyclical, that you now have an ability to stop via your own behavior or via your own action. So we see even now that for a lot of the masculine energy right now going through that process, that is that moment that's almost like the energetic commitment within the self that almost reaffirms your own behavior going forward in order to like see that moment of saying, I'm going to move forward in a way that, again, if there was a feminine energy that caused you pain because they were in pain, potentially because of a partnership with masculine energy that was in pain, that was in partnership because of someone that was in pain, that is that moment that you go, the buck stops here. I'm not going to allow myself to facilitate and bring that pain forward. That is where we see sometimes healing doesn't mean that something gets energetically easier. Sometimes healing comes in the form of saying to oneself, I'm going to facilitate in such a way that I don't propagate the thing that I have experienced that created that pain within me. So we see even now that a lot of the masculine energy moving forward in that way, that in itself feels like a moment where you can take energetic control over something that may have occurred to you that you didn't have control over, because that's that moment that you can reaffirm that you will not become the source of that energetic pain. While for feminine energy, in that modality, that same journey, that same path work, feeling that point of energetic accommodation, working into that space or place of being too energetically adaptable, too energetically flexible, the feminine energy recognizing the value and gift of that to the extent that it allows the feminine, being in the expression of energetic emotionality and empathy, to be able to accommodate and to be able to give the masculine what they need when they need it. This is also feminine recognizing the value and the proportion of that gift, and that ability to do so must be navigated with a sense of energetic discernment, because if not, that over giving in that way can sometimes create a connection towards masculine, wherein the masculine feels like there's too much of that adaptability. It doesn't allow for something that feels strong, because that becomes a moment of the masculine not being able to feel reliant on the feminine, but just feeling like the masculine can kind of just see the feminine as something that, or someone that can just shift or bend to suit the desires and degree of the masculine. So we see both of these energies recognizing the full extent of the value and importance of challenging their own energetic modality for the sense of being able to give the other what they need. That sometimes creates that moment of energetic resistance. So we see even now that these energies navigating in this way, that is that affirmation or commitment of discovering something in the self and your own ability not to necessarily heal something, but just to affirm that you do not want to be a continuation of something that doesn't feel like it is healed. That is its own form of healing. And we see that a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency is affirming that commitment to themselves as they go forward from this point. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union, this is more challenging right now, specifically due to the fact that a lot of this doesn't feel like you're doing this like deep trauma healing on some deep level from something from the past. It is feeling more like something that is very close to where you are presently. A lot of this energy building forward in this way, feeling that deepening of an energetic connection to a certain extent, it can sometimes feel overwhelming. It's even now potentially creating those moments of feeling energetically triggered. What's difficult about it is you might not necessarily even be feeling triggered via something that is immediately happening to you, but something that you're carrying now for the sake of seeing the experience or the wounds of the counterpart that you're now trying to embody in your own experience, right? It's like that's that moment of like something happening to another and saying, well, I'm having a hard time not taking something that happened to you personally, right? But that's almost that moment that feels like the deepening of an energetic connection. What are these energies doing right now? They're navigating through some of those triggers by reaffirming their own commitment in not expanding upon or reopening a wound, but almost by activating in such a way that they're showing via the expression of how they move and interact and engage with each other, that commitment to not creating that same experience or circumstance going forward. Like that is, and that is difficult. We can see it even now because a lot of the energy right now is feeling that resistance point between how they would ideally desire to navigate something versus that mindfulness in via how the counterpart would prefer it to be held. Masculine and feminine energy right now in separation. One of the valuable things that we're seeing right now for a lot of the energy in separation If these are energies in separation that are making new energetic connections, that affirmation or that commitment, not going back to spaces and places from the past. I told you, it's not the fact that these energies right now aren't building new commitments by speaking about the past, by talking heavily about those experiences from the past. But the major factor that we see here, the vector that we left everything on yesterday, was the affirmation in the statement of describing something that is reaffirming someone's own commitment to say, when I speak about the past, it's because the affirmation is I'm not going back there, right? The ability to articulate about something. We see that a lot of the energy right now is closing, is building that sense of closure from the past, specifically because they recognize that through the act of expressing it, they're almost reaffirming their commitment in looking at something and saying, I recognize that that is not something that is immediately being experienced. That is something that is in the past. And that act, just that act of building the new energetic connections, is what is creating the closure right now for a lot of energy as they continue forward from this point. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now. Second card in our 5-card spread for today is our 9 of Pentacles in its reversal. It's a bit of a hairy energy. I'm going to admit it might not necessarily feel absolutely cozy, comfy right now. We even saw it yesterday, right? That's that moment that one's own ability to recognize something in that way. It can almost create that feeling. Like I even see here, there's some energies that even in the act of building forward on the new connections right now, they're almost feeling like a little bit of that trigger point. Like they're almost feeling a little bit of that instability, if you will, because that's that moment that, it's almost that moment that you realize that you've reached a level of closure before you even like recognized it, right? It's like that moment that you almost like feel it unconsciously in the act of building a new connection. So even now, some of that energy like feels that shift. They feel a little bit of that like instability. But is that reaffirming or is that driving energy back towards the past? No, right? That's almost more the energy in separation right now, recognizing that. Almost feeling the sense of that closure coming into play in relationality in the direction that they're moving forward in at this time. And that's that energy that like, I want to say, it's beautiful in the sense that a lot of the energy in separation right now is fully being able to articulate on something that was wrong in a way that they haven't before, specifically because that ability to like realize and recognize that they're giving themselves a closure. Like that's that moment that we even saw the last few days, that lesson, that important value add that's being learned around some of these situations and scenarios right now. That is what is helping the energy process through a lot of that work in separation. And it does have those moments, right? Like that's the energy that almost like accepts and says like, it's a little, like it's not something I've completely recovered from. It's something that I'm learning as I go, because I told you these energies are like pushing their own comfort zones, but they're articulating on the experience. And even that is building the bridge. Masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union right now. This feels more energetically frustrating than any of the other frequencies right now, because for a lot of the energy coming into divine union, that ability of understanding the other, that ability of seeing one's own insecurities and wounds and taking them onto your own self, that can feel energetically destabilizing to a certain degree, because we even see now that there's that moment or modality wherein someone feels more energetically triggered due to something that is happening outside of the self, as opposed to where something happening specifically towards one's own self. And so that's that moment that feels so frustrating when we come into that act of compassion and love, because that's that moment, like remember, we even articulated this, that moment of saying to someone like, I care about you so much it scares me. It's because there's that moment that you're like, your experience is blending into mine, but I don't have control over that experience, right? So that sense of mindfulness, that sense of, and that energetic equivalent of care This is feeling for a lot of the energy coming into divine union frequency right now, like a heart opening exercise that is being navigated because one is feeling triggered. Are these energies allowing themselves to become reactive in the space or span of having that trigger? No, they're allowing that expansion point. They're allowing themselves to be vulnerable. They're allowing themselves just to feel that and recognize that that too is a part of the vibration of love. While for masculine and feminine energy, deep in the heart of the divine union right now, this is going to feel like a great, just like 1,000,000 pounds off your back. This might feel like, something just became light as air, because it's not the fact that you aren't carrying something. But if these are spaces and places, if these are wounds that you are carrying, like with some kind of like energetic burden, like some kind of heavy rock that you've been like carrying up the hill to a certain extent, because you've convinced yourself that you were like at cause or at blame for some of those abandonment wounds, having some kind of breakthrough point in perception that makes you be able to lighten that load of blame or self-doubt. You know, it's not that you're not carrying it, but it's like the thing that you're carrying just got a heck of a lot lighter, right? But sometimes when it gets lighter, it can feel a little disorienting, because those are those moments that like you recognize that sometimes like we hold on to those insecurities because they ground us. And it's like that moment that possibility awakens or opens, it can feel a little disorienting. So we see even now a lot of that energy is almost acclimating to that new point of perception and how they're carrying something that is allowing for that sense of energetic easement. Third card in our 5-card spread for today is the Moon card. Beautiful energy. We can't get away from this right now. If this card looks familiar, and if it looks familiar in this position, we drew it yesterday in its reversal. I think we drew it the day before in its reversal. The Moon card in its reversal, like I'm telling you, ever since that Scorpio, I think ever since that Scorpio full moon, we have not drawn this card in anything but a reversal, which is good, because that is that moment of clarity of understanding. That clarity of understanding of the self. A lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency right now. It's feeling like that, like I told you. It's like that light bulb. It's like that flashlight moment. It's that moment where, again, it's not even nothing for energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency. It's almost one of those moments I want to articulate and say, nothing changed, but everything changed. And that's that moment of saying, nothing changed, but everything changed, because suddenly I was able to look back on something and see something I could not see before. And that ability, that gift, that grace of being able to look back on something and see something that suddenly makes something very, very light. That is that moment that for a lot of the energy feels like a beautiful breakthrough point, because that's that moment of recognizing the value and importance of being able, why do we turn inwards and face those shadows from within? Because how else are we going to get some light in there, right? Like that's how else would you get some light in there? So we see even now that for a lot of the energy that like put themselves on that coursework or did that very important work of like working into those spaces, that moment of clarity and understanding by pushing one's own comfort zone to encounter or face that part of yourself that you may have felt like you were afraid of, being able to navigate them with a sense of compassion and curiosity within your own self, like that's how the light gets in. So we see even now that lightness, like that light feels like it creates that sense of easement, because it's not something that has changed. You're still carrying something, but boy, you moved it from one shoulder to the other, and suddenly it's like a whole different load. So we see even now that a lot of the energy experiencing that, you know, it feels like, I want to say, it just feels like a lot of like clarity that creates that sense of like energetic lightness, if you will. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union right now, this may be less light. I'm going to say this may feel less like that moment of lightness, but it feels more like the clarity of understanding about how much you might care about another person, right? Because what happens in that moment where suddenly the expansiveness of the feeling of care that you have for someone doesn't even just extend into the space of like them feeling like they're creating joy in you. But that expansive moment where it's like you feel that extra additional feeling of care and concern, right? Like that intuition or that anxiety's point in thinking about that energy, that moment of feeling that, like, is almost that moment that, like, again, it's like the happy, and it's like the, like, it's like, it feels like that moment that feels like a breakthrough, but it also feels like difficult because it feels like that expansion point, like a lot of energy being like, wow, I really care about that person, because that's that moment that it's not just articulating on, like, love isn't described in like just the easement point of feeling good with another. It's also in that point of like feeling all of the concern, the care, the anxiety, right? It's like that protectiveness. So we see even now like a lot of that feeling that the energy is navigating, that may even feel like it's creating like a slight sense of crisis for some of the energy entering the divine union frequency, allowing themselves to feel that instead of fear that. Potentially even healing an abandonment wound in the process. If these are energies that are just allowing that and recognizing that that feeling is also an extension of love, that is the energy that feels like they're getting a lot of clarity on just how deep a connection that they feel that they have with their counterpart is, that is leading to that feeling that may sometimes feel overwhelming be simultaneously a very beautiful and expansive experience, because the ability to just observe it and not come into a reactive space almost allows you to feel the full breadth of love, both in the positive and the negative form, right? While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation right now, this is a lot of clarity of pathwork that is being navigated, maintained, and achieved by building out new energetic connections, by articulating on what hasn't worked in the pathwork of the past. And through articulating on what hasn't worked in the pathwork of the past becomes an affirmation of not returning to same past. And that affirmation of pathwork, the dual combination of speaking about the lessons that were taken from the past and the clarity that you're seeking in the present, is almost creating that generative battery effect in on being able to articulate. This is energy that even in the act of expressing this is reaffirming their own commitment not to return to that which has caused them pain. Because that in moment of the masculine and feminine energy doing that dual work right now in separation, that is that moment of clarity that is maintained by continuing to articulate what it is that you're seeking, by talking and expressing about what you moved away from that was not that. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now. Fourth card in our 5-card spread for today is Chariot in its reversal. The only way to find something is to find out where it's not. So again, a lot of this energy, this is how we see that a lot of the energy right now in separation is healing something. Like there's a lot of healing that is occurring right now for energy in separation by articulating upon the experiences by which they were not able to move towards the manifestation goals that they aspired and desired with the counterpart. And what's beautiful about this is not energy. This is energy that's showing the fact that they're doing that really valuable healing work. This isn't energy that's encountering one another in separation and saying, yeah, I don't know what happened. I knew exactly, I was perfect. And then all of this, like this other person just like, woo, or like someone doing vice versa. This is energy that is building upon the experiences. They're building new energetic bridges and saying like, no, I spent a lot of time, effort, and energy looking at something. I'm not avoiding a hard decision. I'm actually walking away from something or moving away from something after putting a lot of time, effort, and energy in understanding exactly what was not working. Because how else can I facilitate something working better if I don't understand what did not work in the past? So even so, this energy is recognizing itself in separation via the mindfulness by which the energy is coming into communication and articulating the experiences from the past that have led them to be where they find themselves presently. And that energy is not necessarily navigating that from a state or space of over-blame of the self, nor are they moving forward from a place of completely victimizing their own experience, but having that mindfulness between what they feel like they could have changed within the self versus something that was outside of their own control, to help articulate and basically build the map for the new energetic connection in saying, I know where I'm going. I know where I want to go. This is why I haven't gotten there yet. This is where I see, like, these are the things that I'm working to fix to try to facilitate an ability to move towards those manifestation goals. And that feels very, even in a moment that you're describing something that did not work, it feels like a moment of breakthrough and clarity, because even potentially seeing someone that looks from things in the same perspective Someone who has that same mindfulness, that is often a sign of energetic alignment, because somebody being able to have a different experience from you but take as this similar lesson is almost that moment of saying like, oh, you know, you perceive the same, like we're in the same space. We understand. We're doing the same energetic assignment. Masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union. This feels more triggering right now than all of the other energetic connections, because this feels less like a breakthrough point. It feels more like a frustration point, because if you're progressing forward with someone right now and you're not feeling like there's anything energetically difficult, if you're doing all this work, if you're in alignment with someone and suddenly you're seeing all of the wounds that someone experienced or expressed or they hold accountable for themselves via the energetic connections that did not necessarily lead to that same manifestation from the past, there's that moment that you're like, it feels very frustrating, because it almost like creates that sense of frustration in you. It's almost like you're experiencing like the full breadth of like the experience that they had to go through to heal in the moment that something is received by yourself, because that's that moment that you're navigating it, you're incorporating it into your own experience, but you're almost like having to do it, like you're having to do like the work of like, you know, months or weeks or years in a matter of like moments. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy navigating that, it can feel a little destabilizing, right? Because that's almost that moment you're like, it makes me really upset that happens to you. It makes me really frustrated that you have to experience that. It makes, you know what I mean? Like that's that moment that like feels like that amplification point, because it's not necessarily something that's happening on your own particular journey, but you're experiencing and feeling it as if it were. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy coming into divine union, that feels like the expansion point of love, but it feels really frustrating at the same time, which is why we saw potentially some of that tower and devil energy popping up yesterday. While for masculine and feminine, deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is potentially a profound breakthrough. Because for energy that feels like they are healing from something, a lot of that is the fact of recognizing that you may feel like you are perceiving something in the wrong way. And the ability to recognize that the reason you're holding something as a wound was because you were carrying it wrong or you were perceiving it in the wrong way. That's that moment that almost feels like an energetic relief, because then that immediately opens the possibility of saying, do I need to carry it at all? If I've been carrying something the wrong way, and now I see the fact that I didn't have to carry it that way, do I need to carry it at all? Fifth card in our 5-card spread for today is, we've got here Emperor in its reversal. I believe this card was also in this position yesterday. This is a little bit, we've seen over the last few days, we did see that a lot of this was a little bit more difficult for the feminine. It's starting to become a little bit more difficult for the masculine right now, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Why? Because for a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, one of the difficulties, one of the reasons that one did not want to necessarily take in this wound, you're allowing yourself to feel the expression of the pain in a way that you haven't before, specifically because something about the adjustment of how you're perceiving this wound is that moment that you're removing your own feeling of control on it. For the masculine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, there is a security in being able to contextualize a wound in such a way that one feels like there was something that you could do to prevent or to adjust or even to stop it, right? For the masculine energy that's able to look back on their own path work and say, that was not something that was my energetic responsibility. That was just something painful that happened to me. That is deeply difficult, because that is a moment that one needs to almost accept a level or degree of an energetic vulnerability that may have led one to create the wound in the first place, because it allowed you to externalize something so that you didn't have to feel it in the way that you felt it, by experiencing it more as an act of something that you needed to change about your own person. So for the masculine energy doing this work right now, it can feel very softening. It can feel very vulnerable. There may be a lot of that, like, you know, feeling of like energetic, like vulnerability that comes through. But that vulnerability is almost to be recognized as a strength, because that observational point and being able to release something and say, not only did I not energetically deserve it, but there was something preventable in terms of it happening, but it wasn't even within my own capacity to have that change. This is almost the masculine recognizing and saying there was someone else that could have helped with this. This is the masculine that's reaffirming and saying, I'm going to become that person. I'm going to become the person that would have prevented that from occurring around or to me at the moment that I experience something, right? So that's the moment that doesn't feel like one is doing so from a sense of like carrying a wound, but that is the affirmation of allowing oneself to feel something in such a way that you're preventing the wound. You're preventing the wound that would have caused the hurt, that created the hurt in you in the first place. I know that sounds like a lot of steps going back, but hopefully if you're doing this work, you understand what I mean. While for feminine energy, this is a lot of the feminine energy deep in the heart of the divine union, doing that same work with the affirmation and equivalent understanding that when the masculine energy hasn't done that work in recognizing their own ability to feel, it's sometimes something that is projected upon the feminine. So this is why we see even now that the feminine energy's own ability to come into a point of resiliency feels like it is an act of or gift that they're giving, not only to their own experience in the past, but reaffirming that sense of refortifying and building a healthier connection with masculine energy going forward. Because that is that moment of saying that the ability to navigate and heal something sometimes requires that moment in saying that one cannot facilitate experiencing a wound in the first place. So for feminine energy, this work that they're doing, they're not only doing it for their own self, but they're doing it for the unhealed masculine energy as well, because that's that moment of saying the only way that you can experience the fact that something needs to be healed is if I tell you that something in you requires something for you to internally navigate and recognize, right? That's further that feminine energy doing their own work on energetic resilience and saying, it is not my job to heal masculine energy that does not desire to be healed, but it is my job to be very discerning between the energy that wants to move forward in that way versus the energy that does not, because it needs to be something by holding that sense of resiliency. I can potentially help the unhealed masculine energy see something in a way that helps them get on that journey for themselves. And that's almost like that energetic act of compassion that we give via tough love in saying, like, I care about you, but like, that's also why I'm not going to let you eat every single cookie in the cookie jar. Because sometimes the way that we love someone is having a way of energetically saying, I care about you, but no. So that is almost created in the sense of the feminine being their most authentic version of self. That is the feminine energy saying, like, again, that is how they're also healing that past connection with anything unhealed in their experience, by reaffirming that even through doing so, they are building back a healthier connection via the masculine. But that is a space or place where they're able to take that element of control back via recognizing their own ability to be resilient in terms of who they are and what they bring forward towards a masculine. Masculine and feminine energy right now coming into divine union, this is less metaphysical and more frustrating, because this is happening more. This is not about old unhealed wounds. This is stuff that's happened like more on the surface, may even be things that you're navigating presently. So we see even now for masculine and feminine, that can feel very energetically triggering. For masculine, that ability to feel like the energetic wounds of the feminine, it feels very vulnerable. It feels very difficult. It feels like it's like, when we talk about that idea of like your heart running around outside your body, it feels a little bit like that, because masculine's own ability of feeling that, it almost requires that element of energetic release, right? Because that's not the masculine energy that's on the healing journey that's trying to control every situation or scenario or outcome. That is the masculine energy feeling that sense or state of energetic compassion. Almost potentially, especially if these were spaces or places wherein masculine has enough empathy to recognize that some of the wounds that the feminine that they're coming into the divine union frequency with are the result of masculine energy that was trying to control the feminine energy's experiences too much. Even then, that is the masculine energy that is recognizing the value of that work of energetic softening. because that is that is the energy of the masculine that is again coming into their own emotional center in building that feeling of trust and connection with the feminine, but not from a state or space of wanting to like control the feminine, bearing in mind this is not based on gender but what it feels most aligned to, but feeling the security of being their most authentic self with the feminine. Via the feminine is also experiencing that if these are situations or circumstances wherein the masculine is opening up to the feminine, this is a feminine energy coming into the divine union that feels that sense of wanting to heal something within the masculine, but also that feminine energy recognizing that we don't force emotional springs. That when we force emotional springs, we move much more in a self-serving manner, right? When we force someone to like experience the emotionality that they're not ready to experience, we don't necessarily do that from an act of compassion for the self so much as something that's coming from our own personal needs. So what is the feminine doing in that modality? Feminine energy is recognizing that the ability of the masculine to articulate and communicate their emotions in such a way that feels natural and best for them. That is also how the feminine energy is healing, because that is the feminine energy that is almost recognizing that while the masculine energy may bear things in different ways, their ability to come forward to the feminine with their truth is built on the feminine energy's own presence and being receptive to it without forcing it from them. While for masculine and feminine energy in separation right now, bearing in mind this is not based on gender but what it feels most aligned to, energy in separation right now is effectively just building, like this is building new bridges by talking about the bridges, how messed up the bridges were in the past. These are new energetic connections being like, let me tell you, you think you messed up that bridge. Let me tell you about the last, like that bridge. Like this is literally the energy that is almost like, working through that. But that's the thing. These are energies that are not moving in that space of looking at something and being like, I don't know what happened. I got a lot of questions. These are energies that are finding one another from a place of curiosity, from a place of even potentially like a little bit of vulnerability. And I'm going to be honest, a little bit of sadness here, right? These are not situations or circumstances wherein these energies feel like they're righteous or they feel like they were in the right. These are energies that have been very mindful of looking and discerning what needs to change within the self versus what externally occurred. And so we see even now a lot of that work feels energetically like them pushing their own envelopes. Masculine, it's very hard because for a lot of the masculine energy in separation right now, it really does feel like the equivalent of taking your armor off as you build forward a new energetic connection with feminine. But that act of vulnerability feels like it's immediately meeting that point of understanding, because if you're leading forward towards a place of openness and vulnerability in feminine, towards feminine, you may be discovering the feminine feeling that sense of being able to navigate and provide same, because these are energies that are they're leading forward and building connections from places of deep honesty, authenticity, and vulnerability. And that requires a being able to look at the past with a lot of critical assessment to identify what didn't work to be able to facilitate what will. And we see even now, if this is masculine energy that's navigating forward with feminine that is moving with a lot more trepidation, this is further not masculine energy that's taking that personally, but almost the masculine energy recognizing and trying to come into a point of understanding to really connect to the feminine experience and understand what may have created that moment or that feeling of trepidation in feminine in the first place, all for the sake of being able to be mindful energetically in not repeating that energetic lesson, but also from a place or space of the masculine saying to a certain extent that they are moving in such a way wherein they are allowing the feminine to effectively dictate that sense of where that point of comfort is as it relates to moving forward. Second, getting clarification on these cards right now between our Six of Pentacles in its reversal and our Nine of Pentacles in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now. Two cards coming out. Woof! And we love these two cards together. These are beautiful cards to have together. We've got our Three of Swords in its reversal in combination with our Six of Wands. So what do we see that's happening here? A lot of healing. Even in separation, there's a lot of healing. And I'm not surprised to see this because we saw that for a lot of the energy in separation right now, something about the new energetic connections that you're making It doesn't validate. It doesn't validate anything that you've navigated prior to this that caused that feeling of disruption or pain. These are not energies that are moving forward in this way, like gleefully. This is energy that is working really hard to understand what did not work in the past, all for the sake of having that result in something that feels like it is valuable by taking those energetic lessons with you as you go forward. And what's beautiful about this with a lot of the energy and separation right now, I told you, this is that distillation in not letting yourself move forward with that heaviness of energetic regret or bitterness, but rather just really looking back and allowing those lessons to be the embodiment of this path work going forward. So even now, in the expressing and articulation of what didn't work, while it may feel like it is energetically painful, it also feels like it is very cathartic, because these aren't energies that are saying that they are perfect or have been perfect every step along the way. But it's that moment of affirmation in terms of recognizing what you can heal within the self that is being activated upon for a lot of the energy and separation that is already showing the fact or that feeling that even in this moment, and even if this is energy that's like putting up pause points, like even pause points right now in new energetic connections, especially for the feminine, that in itself feels like a breakthrough point, because these energies can see how they've tangibly changed as it relates to connection, even in the work that they've done in separation. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, coming into divine union, this feels a little bit more energetically triggering right now, because this is the energy that is experiencing and feeling all of those misalignments of the energy of the counterpart in the past. You're almost like immediately taking them on if you're integrating those wounds into your own person. But are these energies like going on a crusade to validate? No, it's like they're not. Like they're not opening up those wounds by exploring them in a way that someone doesn't want them explored. The affirmation is holding space for them and reaffirming the commitment to heal them as you go forward. While for masculine and feminine energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency right now, this is that adjustment. This is that shifting. This is that movement of perception from one thing you're carrying to another by changing one's perspective of it, that almost immediately allows for the lightening of an energetic burden, because that almost immediately brings up the question of saying, do I even need to carry it at all, right? Like that's that moment that like the reason it feels so much lighter is almost that feeling that the perception, like if that's something that immediately is moving the doubt or the grief or the blame off of something, it's like it feels like that burden that's lifting because of your own understanding of perception on something that allows you to facilitate a healing moment from it. And we see even now that a lot of that energy, how they're continuing to heal that, is by reaffirming their own energetic commitment on the pathwork in the present, by feeling and seeing the change of perception that healing is allowing for the past, that is even now, like this is how that old work is affecting the present, because that is that moment that feels like it's reaffirming your commitment to who you are going to become or who you are going to be by understanding something that occurred to you in the deep past with a heightened sense of clarity. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Nine of Pentacles in its reversal in combination with our Moon card in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification. Come on. Clarification coming through. This card looked familiar. It's a Devil card. We had it upright yesterday, and here it is. Now it's in its reversal, right? Because as long as, like, here's what happens. Like I told you, like if you go through these moments, going on the healing journey doesn't mean you don't get triggered anymore. It doesn't mean you don't have like those uncomfortable feelings. It doesn't mean you have those like, you know, unhealthy coping mechanisms, those bad modalities of thought come through. It's just not what you let stick around. It's like they come in, they walk in, you can go anytime because you're not holding on to them, right? It's not something that you hold on to. So even now we see that ability, like that moment, a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency. What has happened in your perception of something from the past that you used to hold yourself deeply energetically accountable for, to the fact that you created an abandonment wound in yourself around it? You immediately heal it within you. And either again, that's a lot of the masculine energy looking back at something from the deep past, allowing themselves to feel the expression of an emotionality. Recognize that pain or hurt was not something that was a result of what you did, but the projection of another person's pain, which immediately allows the amplification of saying to oneself, it was not my fault. Which creates a moment of feeling deeply vulnerable because you don't have control over something, but it also immediately starts to heal something. Because that's that moment that you're saying, I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable enough to recognize that sometimes bad things happen to me and they're not my fault. While for feminine energy, that ability of looking back on something in the deep past and saying, I internalized something that someone was trying to put upon me because it served their own purposes. It served their own needs at that moment. They made me feel like there was questioning myself in the process. This is the feminine energy saying, there was nothing wrong with me. I just wasn't what someone someone was trying to change me towards being someone that they wanted me to be, as opposed to seeing who I was. So we see both of these energies right now. Those things that they were holding on to as a negative, immediately becoming a positive because of the way that they're perceiving them, that immediately takes the guilt of burden off of the back of someone holding that abandonment wound in the first place. While for masculine and feminine energy, coming into divine union, this is a little bit more difficult because you're not doing this with something that you've been holding for a very long time. You're doing this with something someone just gave you. You're doing this with something someone just gave you that you're trying to integrate into your own experience. You're trying to navigate someone else's wound in such a way that it doesn't feel like it causes that pain in holding it, in such a way that you're not feeling re-triggered in the moment of experiencing it. And that's that moment that is amplified and healed by reaffirming to one's own sense of self a commitment to showing the counterpart that what occurred should not have occurred, nor will it ever happen again. This is the energy that's already going on the path of potentially doing the work that we see that the energy in the divine union frequency is doing by saying, I'm going to show them that insecurity is not something that is theirs to hold. They brought it in from the divine union frequency. It's filthy. It's gross. I don't like it. I'm going to take it on for them, but I'm going to show them through my own work that is not something that they should hold against themselves, that they're beautiful in every aspect, in every way. And if someone made you feel that that's something about you that was wrong, this is the energy that's almost trying to affirm that commitment to looking towards each other with compassion and saying, I'm going to show them that they are energetically perfect. So we see even now that affirmation in itself, boom, that clears a lot of that trigger, because that's that moment of feeling like one can activate upon a wound that another is carrying by reaffirming to someone the fact that they shouldn't be carrying it in the first place. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation, this is energy that's just healing by confronting, by addressing. These are not energies that are walking in and being pay no attention to this elephant behind me. This is the energy in healing that is I would like to introduce you to my elephant. Their name is Maurice. But having that ability to amplify and articulate on these things right now. That moment of being able to address the hard part first. This is energy that is having breakthroughs and connections much sooner because they're not leading from a place of ego. They're not trying to mask these parts of themselves. They're coming forward with them to say better to have these things confronted now than to build an energetic connection and then find out that something that I'm showing you about myself is not something that you aspire or like, or that you have a manifestation goal that I have no desire to participate within. So both of these energies pushing their own envelopes and having a lot of healing in the process, which is why that's this is hard, but I'm going to keep doing it. Just because it's hard doesn't mean I'm not seeing the results of doing so, because it feels like it's having a better result. Clarification between our moon in its reversal and our chariot in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Nine of Wands, and it's upright. These cards, you've noticed these are all the same cards we pulled yesterday. They're almost, I mean, this one's in the same position. So masculine and feminine in separation, this is why it feels like it's challenging, because these are like energies that are coming towards each other in separation, being like, I'm usually not this open with someone. I'm usually not this like this is almost the energy in separation articulating the fact that they're not used to doing things in this way. Like this is almost the energy. And even now, if this is feminine energy that is being more like, I want to say cautious or conscientious in moving forward towards masculine, this is almost the feminine energy, almost saying like, I hope you understand and you're not taking this personally. And this is masculine being like, I completely understand. Like, I understand because I am also on a healing journey. I'm not taking it personally, right? This is almost the masculine energy saying, I want you to recognize that, like, even the masculine recognizing and saying, like, I'm not taking it personally, is the masculine feeling like they've gone through that energetic breakthrough point, because that's the masculine that already, even in separation right now, feels like they're building a better connection to feminine, because that's that masculine energy that's approaching the feminine's own trepidation, not from taking it as a personal injury or insult, but almost that sense of curiosity, saying, I want to understand more so I can be all the more mindful of those spaces and places. While for masculine and feminine energy, and for feminine seeing that is again a sign of the feminine being like, oh, like that's that moment of someone being mindful that immediately like allows for that feeling of some kind of easement point there. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union, this is that moment of just kind of recognizing and saying like, yeah, I'm never going to be like, there's almost the energy of someone looking and being like, I just want you to know, I'm not going to do anything about it, but I'm never going to be okay with that having happened. Like, that's the energy being like, that's the energy being like, I'm building you a garden here. That's never going to happen again. But I want you to know, like, this is almost the energy being like, I want you to know how upset I am about it, like holding these experiences for you, right? Because that even in that moment, and this is again that moment that feels like it is beautiful, because these aren't energies that they're not moving in the directionality of doing something in such a way that the other energy does not aspire and desire to be done. But they're certainly articulating about their feelings, because even that act of articulating on something, rather than becoming reactive to it, is that expression and expansion of care, right? While for masculine and feminine energy, deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is a little bit of that feeling. If you're knocking down these internal walls of the self and you're moving forward with that sense of energetic lightness, it can feel a little vulnerable, right? It almost feels like you just like pulled the scab off of a wound that you've been holding on to for like a long time. So even in that moment, it feels a little sensitive, right? Because it's almost like that moment that you're allowing yourself to feel something in a way that you haven't felt something before. So it's almost that moment of just saying like, it's going to take me a little time to navigate feeling like that. Like even that moment of navigating that with the sense of conscientiousness or care, that is the amplification point in feeling that like that sense of like being gentle with yourself as you do something or you perceive something in a different way. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Chariot in its reversal in combination with our Emperor in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Seven of Pentacles in its reversal. One of the things that is a little bit frustrating right now, especially for a lot of the energy navigating this right now. I don't want anyone getting all touchy about time, right? Because we see even now that some of the energy, if you're doing a lot of this deeper healing, it can feel a little frustrating because there's that moment of being like, I wish I'd landed upon this sooner. I wish I perceived upon this sooner. Just remind yourself, if you're feeling like that, like your own ability to reach that milestone of healing something within yourself does not operate on someone else's clock. You're recognizing and you're realizing it at the moment that you're energetically prepared to do so. For masculine energy, again, not letting yourself feel that point of overwhelm, because again, what occurs in the moment that we have a breakthrough in perceiving something from the past that created a wound in us, that we then are able to recognize that we may have inadvertently allowed that wound to present itself in spaces and places prior to being able to see it. It can feel a little energetically overwhelming. I'm going to say it again to masculine energy. You cannot hold yourself energetically accountable for something that you were not ready to heal or see prior to the time that you were ready to heal or see it. Hindsight is 20/20 because hindsight is broken, right? Hindsight is 20/20 because hindsight is broken. You can only recognize and see something at the time that you do. So making sure that you're able to navigate that space or place of being able to let go of regret or failures or anything that you feel is describable as a failure on your own part, holding that energetic space for the past version of self, almost like you would as child, is what we mean by inner child healing. It doesn't mean you just have empathy for that version of you that was 6 that didn't know any better. If you didn't know any better last week, guess what? That's also the inner child that you need to have a bit of compassion and grace for. While for feminine energy, that same modality may feel like that sense of frustration because that is the expansion point of the feminine, potentially allowing that understanding of too much of that adaptability point, having that point of flux within their own life. Feminine energy, I'm going to say the same thing to you as well. You cannot hold yourself energetically accountable for something that you see that you could have changed in yourself prior to the moment that you see it. You have to hold yourself. Hindsight is 20/20 because hindsight is broken. You have to hold yourself with a state of grace and accountability and remembering how you were perceiving something was the best that you could navigate something at the time that you experienced it. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union, this is the energy, the reason that the energy is feeling like this and the reason this is so much more difficult is this is not a moment of giving oneself grace at this time. This is that moment that you want to give someone else grace for what they've experienced prior to entering the divine union. And these energies are doing so in such a way that they're articulating that desire and that excitement in being able to lead forward in that way, while also feeling the amplification of the frustration of anything that may have occurred prior to this point. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation, this is the energetic closure point of a lot of experiences right now via the new connections that are being made in the process. Because a lot of energy right now is recognizing that closure is not something that we receive by going back to someone that caused a wound and saying, hey, you caused a wound in me. I don't want you to cause that wound anymore. Like, the energy is finding that point of closure by articulating the fact that something occurred in the first place, by articulating upon something that they tried to effectively heal, something that they couldn't navigate to heal, something that they may have asked someone to help them heal, but wasn't able to feel that alignment with, right? So even now, the ability of those energies to articulate on that, that's that moment that almost, again, closure is a quiet door. And sometimes it's the moment that we articulate or amplify something is the moment that we suddenly recognize that we have closed that chapter or we've moved past something. So we see even now that a lot of that energy is feeling that equivalency, specifically in the way that they're articulating on something that happened that prior to this point they may have been feeling like they were still tangibly experiencing. For masculine, it may be feeling a little bit more vulnerable at this time because for the masculine energy, this is a lot of the masculine energy potentially taking accountability in the process of doing so, relinquishing and saying, like, these are the things I wish I could change in the past. It's a little bit easier for it's a little bit easier for the feminine energy in this modality if this is occurring rather than the masculine, because some of the masculine energy is looking more at these spaces from a point of view of regret, in which case I'm going to say the same exact thing, masculine, that I just told the masculine energy that's in the divine union frequency and the feminine energy. Hindsight is 20/20. We cannot assume because we've reached that, when we come into a point of changing or adaptability or changing our priorities, we have to hold ourselves with a bit of grace in relationality to asking ourselves, are we doing everything we can in the present to accommodate and to take accountability for what we cannot change in the past? Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between, I love these cards together. I love these cards. Like, let's make a pin. These are the best cards together. Between our Six of Wands in its upright, our Three of Swords in its reversal, and our Devil card in its reversal. Just beautiful. May I please have one card to clarify, please? Thank you. Clarification. Oh, this one was, she was in a reversal just the other day as well. We've got here our Queen of Pentacles in their upright. How are these energies healing right now? What is the difference in the experience? Masculine energy, learning the work of how to feel safe and vulnerable at the same time, recognizing that vulnerability is something that is the result of strength, not a lack thereof. Feminine, learning that stability, that holding on to something, that feeling energetically strong, having resilience on something is not something that they need to navigate away from. That feminine energy, feeling the security and stability to a certain extent, is something that the feminine is reaching for from within. And they're not experiencing that sense of needing to seek external validation for something that they feel is an internal stabilization point. That's what's happening across a lot of these frequencies right now, and it's very beautiful. That's how these energies are healing. Masculine energy, even having these points of recognition, this is how, if a masculine energy is doing a lot of this quantum healing and looking at a situation in the past and saying, a hurt feminine hurt me. A hurt feminine hurt me. A hurt feminine was hurt because of their connection with a hurt masculine. A hurt masculine was hurt because of their connection with a hurt feminine. A hurt feminine was hurt. Masculine's going, I know how to stop this. Masculine goes, there's something completely in my control. There's something completely in my control. If I want to be the person that's facilitating the healing, I need to heal my connection with feminine. My ability to heal connection with feminine is how I can tangibly, if I cannot go back to my own experience, I can build forward in such a way that I know that I will not create that space or place wherein that energy is in such a place that cycle of trauma or pain perpetuates and continues. So this is the masculine energy in the divine union frequency that is doing so. Healing their connection with feminine, recognizing that to heal the connection with feminine, they heal the connection with their own self. While for feminine energy, doing the same level of quantum healing, the feminine saying, if masculine energy was in such a space or place where they felt like they could not be vulnerable with feminine, it's because they thought the feminine energy was too adaptable, too changeable. The masculine energy becomes afraid of being vulnerable to a feminine that is too changeable. I must be secure in who I am. So the masculine energy feels the strength and security and stability in being able to be strong with me. This is the feminine energy working on their own sense of energetic resilience to, again, hold forth and basically come into that space of saying, masculine energy, you can be vulnerable with me because I am not going to create that space where you're not sure what to anticipate and expect. I'm going to create that with the consistency and stability that I can create within my own self. So both of these energies, healing the past circumstances wherein they feel like they took the wrong energetic lesson, their ability to re-perceive something is what is allowing a deeper level of healing. Changing the present, not to be able to fix the past, but to be able to mollify and modify what occurred in the past that may have created the trauma in the first place. Masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union. This is a little less metaphysical. It's much more tangible, which is why it's much more triggering, because this isn't far away looking at this. This is something that's very close. Masculine and feminine energy reaffirming their own ability to heal the wounds that the energy is bringing into the divine union by moving in such a way of navigating their own self. This is not energy that is changing for the sake of the counterpart. It's reaffirming their own commitment to being healed, to continue to perpetuate that sense of healing, to help the other energy recognize and realize that not only can you navigate your own wounds, but you can also effectively navigate the wounds and the insecurities that they're bringing forth towards you, right? You're just taking them onto your own self. but you're also doing so in such a way that while it may feel triggering, you're also allowing yourself just to feel what you're feeling instead of react to it. That is the hard expansion exercise. And we see even now for masculine, it's hard because it makes you have to feel like you have to be much more vulnerable. And for feminine, it's hard because it makes you feel like you have to be much more resilient. Well, for masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation, a lot of this work right now, this is just building bridges. I just keep saying building bridges by talking about what you're going to fix the next time you build that bridge. And a lot of that energy, I have to stress, this is not energy that is looking and being like, I was trying to build a bridge with someone. They were really bad at building bridges. I am really good at building bridges. I am the best bridge builder. That person was a nightmare. No, these energies are working through that moment, and they're assessing and they're identifying and saying, this is what I'm changing within myself to build a better bridge going forward. This is what I learned from that experience of, and some of the energy being like, look, this is what I learned from the experience of building a bridge with someone that was not great at building a bridge with. But like, it also, like, I also recognize in those moments, maybe I wasn't the best person at building a bridge with. Right? Sometimes this is the energy being like, the person that was really bad at building a bridge triggered me, and then I started building a bad bridge, and then it was just like a mess. Like, then it became more of a, like, this is the energy that's like doing that work. And here's the thing, we see even now that some of that energy is building connections right now, where it feels like it is healing. And that sense of like energetic humor to a certain extent, even that may feel like a little bit of that shifting that we're seeing, right? Being able to express something that may have felt like it was overwhelming, but with that sense of like lightness, with that sense of like easement. It's not that something doesn't hurt, but almost someone saying it's getting easier to talk about. Like, even that feels like there's a lot of catharsis that's happening right now. For masculine and feminine in separation. For masculine, it's being able to more authentically talk with like acceptance and vulnerability on what you've been changing from within. Masculine almost leading forth the feminine, being like, I know I don't need to be perfect with you. I'm just trying to be my true self. Feminine doing the same, and these energies being very open, but having a lot of heal. And these are energies that might not necessarily even be trying to be removing into the romantic space right away, because we're seeing here that a lot of the energy is having so much work in terms of building from a point of just like deep like connection and catharsis by expressing things, that itself may feel like that's the type of energy that's saying like, I just enjoy your company. I just enjoy this connection. Because the connection feels like a campfire. It feels like something that's creating warmth in the process of it being created. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Devil card in its reversal and our Nine of Wands in its upright. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with, we like to see this, our Five of Swords in its reversal, which should also look familiar because this card's been popping up a lot for us too. Masculine and feminine energy in separation. What is the difference here? What is the difference of these energies that are making connections, that are talking so heavily about the past? Are these energies that are looking at someone and going, I don't know, they're talking so much about the past, I think they're stuck there? No. Because these energies aren't throwing stones at the past. They're looking at it something in a way, and they're almost reaffirming as they express it their commitment of not going back towards it. The difference here being very vital and key, which is again, that articulation or that amplification of someone walking away from something and saying that expression of feeling like there was some kind of like great degree of injury from a thing, which might like articulate or amplify that feeling of like wanting to return to it. These are energies that are almost saying like, I'm moving away from something because it wasn't healthy. I'm moving away from something because I recognize something wasn't healed. This is the energy that's almost affirming their own sense of saying it was difficult. Like, this is energy that's being very honest about the connections of the past in the relationality of building the bridges in the future. And this is not energy that's going, I don't care about them. I never cared about that. It wasn't a big deal. No, I don't know. Like, I don't want to talk about it. No, this is energy that's going, it's really hard. Like, this is the energy that's like almost amplifying and saying there have been moments that have been difficult. Like, this is painful. These are energies that are identifying their own process of healing, But even in describing something and saying like, I did everything I could not to have to walk away from something, that in itself is a lot of this energy recognizing one another in the process, because that's the energy that almost says, you know, I was doing everything I could to try to fix myself, to make something heal, up until the point that there was nothing else I feel that I could have done in a more healthy way beyond move away from something. And when we are in a healing vibration and we reach that termination point, there's really nothing we can do to go back to something, because that's a moment that we identify and say, the only way I could choose to stay in this circumstance or situation is if I make the conscious choice to walk back on my healing journey. Like, I've healed so much from an unhealthy connection. The only way I can perpetuate it is to take a step backwards. This is a lot of energy that's encountering one another in this journey and saying, I had no choice but to step forward. Masculine, and that moment of affirmation and identifying that to one another, that's the energy that even if they had different experiences, they're almost looking and saying, same. Masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union. This feels more like you've stepped into that modality with one another. The problem is a lot of the stuff that you're feeling like you're healing from, like the energy in the divine union, they're doing this like stuff way back there. You just like, this is like right outside. This is like the stuff that's like still very much around you to a certain extent. So what are these energies doing? Are they putting all their time, effort, and attention around the situations and circumstances that cause the pain for the other? No. They're reaffirming their own commitment going forward by being very conscientious and curious to understand what occurred in the past, by which and through which to be able to facilitate that healing all the more strongly. Right? That's that moment that doesn't feel like it creates that like reactivity point. It doesn't create that point of like pushing someone away because something becomes hard. This is the energy that almost says like that's that tie that binds, if you will, because that's the energy that almost reaffirms their own energetic commitment in helping each other through that journey of self, even around navigating the insecurities, the doubts and fears that were put there by energy outside of the counterpart connection. While for masculine and feminine energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, if you just had an energetic breakthrough on something that you've been holding yourself accountable for a long time, because your own perception of something coming from a point of healing has now allowed you an ability to let something go, it just feels like the lightening of a burden. You know, and the only thing that we see here is it's like that moment that feels like that heightened degree of sensitivity to a certain extent, specifically because you're allowing yourself to see or look at something that you may have felt very like not wanting to address. And it's that moment that like, again, it feels almost like you're like light, like your eyes adjusting to like the brightness of something, because that's that moment that you're accommodating that sense that you're now able to feel that higher degree of energetic healing towards something that like you may have shied away from healing in the past. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, between our 9 of Wands in combination with our 7 of Pentacles in its reversal. The Tower in its reversal. Guys, I'm sorry, can we just take a moment to observe? Can you see how many of these cards were the same cards that we pulled yesterday? We had yesterday, the Devil card was here, and so was the Tower, and here they are, they're back again. The Tower in its reversal, though, and remember, this was in its upright, because that's the moment that we see even now, a lot of this energy going through that work, because what is happening? What is the moment of breakthrough? Being able to confront something within the self that may felt like it was inconfrontable prior to this point. Not allowing it to create that state of reactivity, but more that sense of exploration and curiosity that allowed for that change of perspective that suddenly creates that sense of understanding. This is how we're able to heal from the situations and circumstances of the past, even if they're so far back in the past that we feel like there's nothing that we can tangibly do to affect them. We always want to address those moments because they can reaffirm our own commitment in not allowing that sense of trauma or pain to perpetuate itself going forward. So we see even now that a lot of that energy is doing so in a way that it doesn't feel like an this is not energy that is overly concentrated or overly fixated at staring at the trauma or working through it. This is the energy that says, I want to observe it for the sake and for the ability of being able to facilitate through it and being able to navigate forward in a way that it does not perpetuate. And that's the energy that says, I need to allow myself to feel something and experience it. And through doing so, I can rectify it. Now, the only hurdle that we're seeing that for a lot of the energy right now that's doing this work, if this is energy that's doing the work in this way, this could be this moment where when you recognize that, it has a domino effect in terms of everything that may have happened the minute that you receive that abandonment wound, that you may see may have been those expressions of you inadvertently reacting or navigating things because you were holding that wound in the wrong way. So this could almost be that moment that a lot of this feels like a little bit of processing, because it's coming forward, right? It's going bump, 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 because you have to look at everything that happened that you now healed from that point, and you have to see the understanding on how your own actions may have been impacted because of the way you were perceiving the wrong energetic lesson. So we see even now that a lot of the energy doing that work, it can feel a little bit like that moment of like rectification or restoration. And it needs to be navigated with a level of compassion and love and grace for oneself, in accepting that we only can take that sense of understanding of our own journey in the moment that we recognize and realize it, right? So even having that moment of accountability, that can feel very like overwhelming at a point, because that's almost that moment that you see. Like, that's why you want to address those parts of yourself that are so hard to navigate, because if not, those are those moments you realize that you may have been inadvertently like affecting others with a wound that you couldn't necessarily see because you weren't ready to address it. So we see even now that that's a lot of that energy that's like, even through that process, like letting go of the energetic regret, but also accepting one's own like understanding of the self, which is allowing for a point of rectification in the present. Well, for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union, this isn't feeling like something that is like had like a long like journey coming up towards you. This is more of that moment that feels to a certain extent like something that you're navigating more in the present space, because this is that moment of masculine and feminine taking on the wounds of the other, making space for it, feeling even that sense of like anxiety or aggression building in, and then immediately coming into that easement point is all being in the sense of recognizing that one hasn't had the amount of time that another person has had in experiencing something. So even that, giving yourself the grace and saying like, time will make this easier. Like, that's that moment that one is like almost recognizing again the factor of time being an advantageous like mile marker to a certain extent in allowing oneself, especially if you are feeling more reactive, to say, this is something that is like I'm just experiencing for the first time, especially if these are wounds of another that I'm now having to take on for the first time. Time will make this a little bit energetically easier, and particularly time will allow for that vector or facet of potentially healing those things. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Queen of Pentacles in its upright and our Five of Swords in its reversal. One card to clarify. Clarification coming through right now with our Fool in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy that is in separation. A lot of this work that we see even now we see so much of this energy in separation, feeling that sense of rectification. This is either rectification of past experiences, coming to peace with things, or experiencing those moments of building new energetic connections right now that are almost allowing you to feel like something that you were experiencing from a point of crisis is now like you're beyond the crisis, right? Being able to articulate on a crisis is usually a sign that you're out of a point of crisis. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy This is that closure point that we were identifying in that experience of being able to talk about something not like it is happening, but something that has happened. That in itself is a lot of this energy bringing that to bear. And it's bringing for masculine and feminine a lot of breakthroughs energetically. For masculine, being very emotionally vulnerable. Feminine, building that sense of energetic resilience. Both of these energies putting that into play. The lesson of a lot of this work, seeing the tangible result, is the moment of energetic closure, because it's almost that moment of seeing and feeling the value of a lesson of something that experienced from the past that almost reaffirms one's commitment not to go back to the place that caused you to learn the lesson in the first place, but almost creates that sense of like wisdom, being able to look at something and say like, okay, I understand like the lesson I was able to take from it. It doesn't make it better, but it certainly makes it easier. It certainly makes it more, it makes it have had some intrinsic value. Masculine and feminine coming into divine union. This is the energy that feels the same way right now as it relates to the connection. This is the energy in separation, the energy in divine union feeling the same way. Why? How is the energy coming into divine union right now, navigating some of the feelings of the frustration, of the wounds and the hurts that the energy is carrying into divine union? All of that was a journey of coming into the divine union, right? It's not that moment that you like, it's not that moment. That's how the energy is now navigating and bringing these wounds on, because that's that moment of looking and saying like, not that sense of looking at someone and being like, I wish that didn't happen, but almost that moment that makes it easier to bear a pain that you're holding for another and saying, you're here now. I can't control anything that happened prior to you being here, but I'm very glad you're here now with me, right? So that modality of coming into divine union and almost having that sense, like that in a way feels to a certain extent like that moment where it's like again, when you navigate forward with the point with someone, it's not like you like are glad that someone went through something difficult, but you also recognize that that's like your paths like led to that point. Like it feels like, again, it's not happy, but it does offer that level of catharsis because it makes even the experience of coming into divine union, navigating your own wounds, have that sense of fundamental meaning. While for masculine and feminine energy that is deep in the heart of the divine union, this is a whole different change of perspective on things that you're able to take going forward. And a lot of that has more to do with some of the energy in the divine union frequency. If you're perceiving things in a different way from the past, this might be a point where some of the energy in the divine union wants to address something from the past because they're perceiving it in a different way. This is not the energy that's like forward. This is energy that's had these moments. I got to say, if this is energy in the divine union, that it has moments from the deep past and they've healed something and now they can see how that unhealed part of them, like their perception shift may have impacted things in a way that they hadn't seen before. This is that energy that's now feeling like a lot of doors have opened in relationality to how they want to move forward. So it's almost that moment that like requires that pause point as one considers like the implications of that path work in relationality to like some of the experiences from the past. Because if you're healing something from way in the past, that means that there's a lot of other points in the past that you have to look at with new optics. So this might take a little time. So continuing to get clarification on these cards between our Queen of Pentacles in its upright and our Tower in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Judgment card in its reversal. And that's what we're talking about. That's exactly what we're talking about in relationality to these situations and circumstances, right? Because what happens when you heal something, when you perceive something that happened to you from like way in the past, but you take a different lesson from it. Well, then you have to look at a whole bunch of stuff that happened between those points with those new eyes, like with that new eye, with that new perception. So we see even now that that's creating that moment of like clarity, and it's having a little bit of a different impact on masculine and feminine, because if this is something where, and again, you created some like armor around yourself to protect yourself from feeling from something, like that was where the abandonment wound was, you could be seeing some things now with that perception of like, I'll put it this way. If masculine energy experienced a wound from a feminine energy that was experiencing a wound that made the masculine energy defensive of the feminine, this is masculine energy potentially coming into a rectification point and potentially expressing that wound, that protection point from feminine energy that may not necessarily have deserved to feel that. There could be some energy of masculine recognizing and realizing that if that was the masculine energy almost carrying over a wound from an injured feminine, that then they kind of like assumed all the other feminine energy was coming towards them like that. That's why this can be a little overwhelming for masculine energy going through this right now, because that changes the perception on some of the experiences that may have happened between those points. While for feminine energy, that moment of recognizing one's own, like this feels a little bit more grounding for feminine, because this is creating a moment of the feminine being able to like release some energetic blame around circumstances or situations, because that's a feminine energy that's able to look back on something with a deeper sense of clarity because they're grounding more in the present moment. So both of these energies right now in the divine union frequency, doing a lot of that readjustment, like looking at the past with new eyes, having like healed some kind of moment in the deep past with a heightened sense of clarity. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into divine union, this is more of that sense of coming into divine union that changes one's own opinion around your own previous journey. And this is what I mean even now with the energy navigating that space, where it's like one of the things that makes something energetically easier is not the fact of holding space in such a way that you're holding someone's wounds. You know, it's that navigation point that almost feels like the best way to express it is like masculine and feminine saying to one another, like, I wish you didn't have to experience those things, but I'm really glad you're here. Like, I'm really glad I found you. Like, that's the type of energy that we see that's entering the divine union frequency right now, that's helping to mollify some of that feeling of like frustration and how much may have occurred to be able to come into that modality. While it's for masculine and feminine energy, in separation, this is starting to feel like some catharsis around circumstances or situations that may have felt insurmountable or untenable from the past. There's some energy right now that's like almost talking to new energetic connections and saying like, I didn't think I'd ever recover from that. I didn't think that there was any like path forward. I didn't know, like that felt like the worst moment. But this is energy that's now almost saying like, I can see now that I have. Like, this is the energy. It's like I put one foot in front of the other and here I am. Final card for today's spread between our Fool in its reversal in combination with our Judgment card in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Eight of Cups. Masculine and feminine energy in separation. I told you, a lot of energy right now finding that point of like deep energetic closure around situations and circumstances from the past. But that is not the kind of closure of walking away from something. That's the energy that's walking away from something because they're walking into something, right? That's the equivalent of the recognition point that that feeling of closure is something that is existing forward, not something that you achieve going backward. So we see even now like a lot of that energy feeling that sense. It doesn't feel like that moment of the energy, like that's that moment of the energy feeling that weight or that validation point and being able to look at the past with new eyes that creates that sense of healing as they continue forward, because it's almost like the closure is the perspective that they're having in identifying something as having happened in the past. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union, this is the affirmation that they're making as you move into the commitment, deeper into the heart of the divine union frequency, by almost reaffirming and saying to one another, like, I can affirm that anything that you're giving me that is a wound, I will not create that wound in you again. I will not allow that to occur. And that is the energy that almost says, like, again, there's no other way I can show that to you but by proving that to you every day. This is an energy that's saying, like, I'm just going to say that that's going to be okay. This is the energy that's saying, I'm going to say that it's going to be okay because I'm always going to commit to doing so. While for masculine and feminine energy, that is in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is a lot of that path work of the self. Being able to return to something from the past with a new perception is now allowing for a reconsideration of multiple things that may have happened in the past, receiving that clarity point from something way in the past that you may have been carrying in the wrong way, that's helping you see things from a different perspective in many, many different contexts between then and now. Bottom of the deck on this reading right now is the Knight of Wands in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy across all of the frequencies. You know, this is like a lot of that energetic heaviness that we are seeing right now. And I gotta say, a little bit of this energy, it feels like a bit of like a, I want to say like a bit of a thick blanket is the best way I can describe it. So even now, like, if you're feeling some of that like energetic density right now, remind yourself that that is something that is just kind of like momentary, if you will. Masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency. You know, a lot of this work, and I think that one of the things that's interesting about this is we see even now, this is why this is a little bit more difficult for masculine, because this is that moment of masculine. This can be more of an internalized journey for the masculine energy experiencing this, because this is that moment, masculine, where you may be taking accountability energetically for the way that you may have moved in the past. It may feel like there's some energy of regret there. I'm going to say what I said before about regret. One's own ability to perceive something that you have regret for is the amplification of you coming into a heightened degree of prioritization. So that's something you can work on releasing by reaffirming your commitment not to go back to those spaces or places where you may have made those choices. While for feminine, a lot of this work could potentially create a sense of trepidation in feminine with masculine energy, but we see even now that that's the feminine energy working to heal that within the self as well, because this is the feminine energy recognizing to a certain degree that, you know, hindsight is 20/20, but hindsight's also a little faulty. So this can be hard for feminine energy going through this, because this kind of opens the door in kind of conscientiousness and relationality to navigating not only the journey of the self, but the intentionality of some of the masculine energy that they may have experienced prior to those moments, right? While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union, that ability or that modality of energetic protectiveness, like that feeling of wanting to protect the counterpart, it's difficult, because that we see here that that's the energy that's not trying to reopen wounds by putting too much over concentration on something that you're feeling in an intense degree that you recognize as just something that is like a normal, like something that has already been integrated in another's experience. So we see even now that could feel like a little bit of that like stop start, because that's that desire to heal, but without wanting to like force someone to heal something. And that's almost requiring one to be very energetically mindful in terms of how to navigate those wounds and insecurities. While for masculine and feminine energy in separation, this has to do with a lot of the trepidation that feminine is experiencing right now in relationality to the passion center. There's a lot of energy right now that's building new energetic connections, but they're being very hesitant in building from a passion space. Feminine energy is working very hard to see if there is energetic alignment with masculine prior to building a passionate connection. Masculine energy in a point of healing is probably doing the same and recognizing and identifying why the feminine energy may be in that modality. So even now, that could be a feeling that like there is a little bit of like tension in relationality to suppressing or suspending that in the act of trying to navigate and determine if there is what feels like healthy, positive alignment. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and experiencing it. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, Strega.com. My private readings are done over video, and if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you pay. Just mention your subscriber name at the point of payment. Please keep in mind, if you book a private reading with me, it is a 2-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you would like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website, so I encourage you to do it there. Also, just a couple of updates before we close up and begin personal readings for the day. First and foremost, thank you so much to everybody who joined us this week for our class on the Magician card. I had such a great time being able to go over that card with you. I would like to encourage and welcome all of you, if you would like to become a part of our class program, to become a paid subscriber to my Substack, graystrega.substack.com. Our next live class will be on Wednesday, June 16th, and we will be focusing our studies on the High Priestess card. That class, all you need to do to become a part of that class program is become a paid subscriber. Your subscription will include access to each month's live class. As well, if you can't make the live class, never fear, you will also receive access to the recording and course materials for all of the previous classes. So if you become a paid subscriber now, you got plenty of time to catch up on the first 2 lessons that we've taught, the Fool and the Magician. Also, you will have access to a free one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any question in relationality to anything that we've already gone over or anything in relationality to your own tarot studies. Further, if you decide to become a founding member to my Substack, not only do you get a discount on the full year's worth of classes, but you also receive a free 1-hour mentorship reading with me, wherein we will assess and understand where you are on your own particular tarot journey, and I'll give you some insight on what I feel would be best to serve you as it relates to utilizing the classes going forward and things that you may want to focus and concentrate on in building upon your own unique practice. One of the things I tried to focus on in these classes is building out an experience that is beneficial to both the absolute novice practitioner as well as the seasoned tarot reader. There's a bit of something there for everyone. Thank you so much to everyone who's already a part of that journey with me. And I look forward to you guys potentially joining me at our next class. And even if you don't become a subscriber to my Substack, I encourage you to become a follower, because that's where we put our newsletter, any updates in relationality to our schedule on TikTok to do the daily collectives. All of that is housed over there. So if you're following me here, I encourage you to follow me over there. Second of all, we will be announcing the winner of last month's free reading this week on TikTok, but we have started a new contest, and that is a referral contest. So for anyone who has already taken our travel survey, thank you. If you would like another entry to be able to win, all you need to do is refer that survey to some friends. Whoever wins the next drawing, I'm also going to be asking who referred them to take the survey. You not only will the individual who is drawn for receive a free tarot reading, but so will the person who referred them. So we're giving out 2 free 15-minute readings. So if you can refer that survey to a friend, I would deeply appreciate it. And if you've already taken it, thank you. As I mentioned, we are looking about doing some retreats in the upcoming months. I have a few ideas on where we want to go and what we were going to do, but I really want your feedback as well. Finally, I have a few new offerings that are now being available to those who get readings with me. Due to a lot of requests, I'm now offering mentorship classes. Those mentorship classes can either be purchased on an individual level, or you can purchase a package, a month-to-month mentorship class. So there's a discount if you purchase weekly classes. Those classes can focus on whatever spiritual aspect of your journey that you would like to focus on in relationality to the tarot. We will customize those for each of the people taking the mentorship. There's a limited number of those mentorship classes available because they take a lot of preparation on my part. So thank you to everybody who's partaking in them. And again, I appreciate you. And second of all, for those who are looking for more consistent weekly tarot guidance, I am now offering a discount on weekly tarot insight packages. Those are packages that you can buy month to month for tarot readings 30 minutes a piece each week to keep more consistent track on where you are on your own journey and what you might need to know to best take advantage of where you are energetically each week. Again, I want to thank you guys so much for being here and receiving these messages. I appreciate you and I appreciate your feedback. A lot of these courses and offerings I'm creating because of the requests that I've had by you. So thank you so much for being here and receiving them. I hope you guys have an absolutely beautiful day. Please take care of yourselves. Please take care of each other. And we will do this again tomorrow.